Hello and welcome to a interesting video on how to create grids in Revit. So we are going to start off with creating a new project and then we shall look at creating grids. So after clicking the new button from the models area in Revit, you will have the option to pick different templates to start your project. I'm going to go with the construction template and I'm going to click OK. And then from here, this should be your starting view that you see once you start a project. So why do we start with drawing grids when we start a project? Well, in construction, it's very common for us to have a grid reference when we are working with things like floor plans, site plans, and even like enlarged plans. And the idea is that you can reference a particular part of a building, whether it be like a corner of a building, a side of a building, or a particular room. Having that grid reference just makes it easier for everyone, like the project manager or the architect or the site manager, to get a sense of what people are talking about when they are referring to different parts of the building. So how do we draw grids when we are creating a project? So the first step is to open up the architecture tab here at the top. And then if you have a look on the right side, there should be a section called data. So with this section, we have the option to draw levels and grids. We are going to pick the grid option here. And you can see after I selected that command, the ribbon at the top has changed to green, and it should say modify place grid. Now here, this section shows us the different types of grids we can draw. So we can draw a grid by a linear line, we can draw curved grids, arced grids, and also there is the option to pick lines, which we will cover a bit later. Let's start with the first like standard method. So this is the line method, and we are going to start from right to left. So if we start and click here somewhere in the workspace, and then just move our cursor to the right, the next click, that will place the grid onto the workspace, okay? And notice how after I've placed that first grid, this command is continuous, so it will let me place another one. So if I repeat that, click somewhere on the right, and you can see here, it is somewhat detecting the placement of the first grid and kind of aligning to that first endpoint there. So if I click here to place my second one, and then click on another spot here, that places the second one. And by default, the first grid you draw will have a number 1, and then it will remember the last grid you've placed, and it would increment upwards by 1. So you get grid line 2 now. And then for the next one, let's draw grid line 3. And as you can see, it's very straightforward. That process of drawing the next one and the next one. So let's look at maybe the picked line methods. So if I press cancel twice, right, to come out of that command, because I'm still in the grid command. So press cancel twice, that would kind of end the grid command, and you can see how my cursor has turned back to like a pointer, right? So if I then click on grid again, but this time I choose pick lines. Let's see what this does. So with pick lines, I have the option to add an offset here. Okay, so I'm just going to add a offset. So let's say offset by 1000. And you can see after I applied an offset, the pick line tool, what it does is it senses any lines you have in the workspace, and it allows you to kind of use that as a reference to add a grid line. So here, with an offset of 1000, I'm actually picking where the next grid would be added, would be placed here, right? So if I click somewhere here, a meter away from grid line 3 now places a grid line below it, and that now is grid line 4. So that's how you use pick lines. But what about the vertical grids? So we can just switch back to the linear line method. of drawing grids, and we can just draw it upwards, and notice how I still have that offset in my options bar here. So what I'm drawing now has an offset of 1000. So that's one vertical grid, and what you can do now is you can press escape twice to come out of that command, and then you can also click here on the bubble to change this value to a letter. So in construction, we normally have one axis as a number and then the other opposite axis as a letter, just to differentiate between the two here. Okay, so that one becomes A, and then we can repeat this process. So if we click on grid again in the architecture ribbon, over to the right here, click on grid, and we can keep on drawing, and Revit will remember the last value you've inputted, which is A, so that's why it's B now. Okay, and then I'm just going to draw a few more grids like that. And there you have it. That's how you draw grids in Revit. So if you found this video useful, please give it a like and follow the channel. Have a great day.